questions that have been submitted in advance. Now, the first two questions both came from a town council, but I think they're relevant to everyone. The first question that we had, and Andy's very helpfully done some research to make sure he's absolutely certain of this. The first question was, with the new legislation, is there a time limit on prosecution capability, or is it infinite, as seemingly in the case of the Hillsborough disaster?
Thank you very much. Interesting question. Just before we start, I must make something clear. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't give legal advice, because my insurance company would be horrified if I did. So I'm a chartered safety practitioner, so I'm giving an opinion from the point of view of safety management. So with that in mind, is there a time limit? The quick answer is no, there isn't. Any serious criminal matter, by which I mean any case that can be tried in the Crown Court by a judge and jury, does not have a time limit on it. There are in some civil cases, but not in criminal. So what does that mean in practice? It means that any time, if felt appropriate, the police or the HSE or whoever could start an investigation. Doesn't mean there's going to be a prosecution, but yes, they could start an investigation. There is no time limit, unlike the USA, for example. So that's that one dealt with.
Okay. From the same organisation.
Oh yes.
Sorry. From the same organisation, we had another question, which was, within the legislation, is there capability for prosecution on the grounds of professional culpable homicide if organising bodies such as district, local or county councils and not specific persons are seen to have failed in due diligence or adequate planning in the event of the incident? And I'm handing this one back to Andy again.
Thank you. This is a very interesting question, and I had to do some research on this and think about it. It looks, on the face of it, you've got an organisation that gets something wrong and somebody dies. So surely that's corporate manslaughter, which is what he's referring to. The offence is corporate manslaughter. Actually, it isn't. And the reason is, it's surprising, I had to think about this. There are 4 grounds which have to be met before a prosecution for corporate manslaughter can go ahead. And one of those grounds is there's got to be evidence of failure by senior management which has a significant effect on the outcome. So in other words, senior management somehow, somewhere, got it wrong, and that contributed to the death. Now, he makes it quite clear in the question that specific persons are not seen to have failed. So on that basis, at the moment, there's no evidence that senior management failed in some way. In which case, if it went to court for corporate manslaughter on those grounds, it would fail because they're not meeting the final condition of the charge. If an investigation discovered that there was failings at senior management, which may have had an effect on what happened, then corporate manslaughter would apply. But as it stands, the description we've got does not cover corporate manslaughter. It's a technical issue, but it's there. However, that does not mean that the council can walk away smiling, because they may have dodged a corporate manslaughter charge, but there are others. And the one that springs to mind is breaching the Health and Safety at Work Act. Because health and safety at work doesn't just apply to employees, there's also a duty of care to the general public, to people who are not employed by the council, but who are affected by what the council does, like running buildings, like acting as a venue for events. Now, if in one of those cases somebody died, the council could possibly be prosecuted for breach of its duty of care. That offence is a lot easier to prove. You don't have to prove management involvement. All you prove is there was a duty of care, yeah. That failed That's going to be discussed, and that failure caused the fatality. So it's still open to discussion, but you haven't got to worry about whether senior management got involved. It's not an issue. As it turns out, the penalties are the same. Whether it's corporate manslaughter or whether it's breach of duty of care, for an organisation, the penalty is still the same, an unlimited fine. And by what they mean by unlimited is strictly that, unlimited. A judge could easily award a fine in the order of 6 figures and possibly higher. And that fine has got to be paid from the organisation's own resources. They can't insure against it. They simply have to pay it out their own money. So whichever way you go at it, if the council have caused somebody's death, yes, they will be called to account. Precisely how they're called to account is a legal issue, but they will be held to account. Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure if anybody else has got questions. Dan, I think you raised an interesting point last night. So just to repeat for the benefit of the microphone, if I've understood that correctly, in terms of gaining physical access to premises, what can organisations already be doing? So I'll go first to Amanda with that, and then we'll move on to Chris to ask similarly, from an information security perspective, what can organisations already be doing to prepare? Nailed it. Thank you. So, Amanda, what can people be doing to improve access?
Okay. I think that prevention is better than the cure. So, as far as physical access is concerned, the more that you can monitor who is entering your premises or have, what's the word I'm looking for? Control. Well, good word. As long as you've got control over who's coming in, then you can limit what actually happens on your premises. And even though people think of automation being excessively expensive, in fact, it's not as expensive as you think it is. It can be done in phases. And you can have a degree of controlled access on a limited budget. But it is so much more better to do that at this stage. Carrying out your risk assessment, knowing who's accessing your premises is really important, even from a domestic point of view, but greater from a corporate point of view, especially when the general public are having access to businesses or buildings of this magnitude, because it's the more we know what's happening in our buildings and the more we know what we are opening ourselves up to on a daily basis, then we need to become diligent as people too. So even though secured access, laying it all down to, well, let's leave it to the organisation, which is their job, but also we as individuals, as Joe Public, need also to be more diligent in what is going on around us. And we owe that to our own safety, but that also leads to the safety of others. So even though we promote having physical secured access, which is good, it will stop people entering your premises. You know who's there, you know who you're going to let in and out. It's also diligence from Joe Public point of view. Making ourselves more aware. No, we don't want to. No, we shouldn't have to. But unfortunately, the climate is right now that we need to. And self-preservation is good, because the more you're looking out for yourself, the more instinctively you begin to look out for other people too. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thank you. So, Chris.
Yeah, so on that one, just to let you know, I'm actually going to audit a facility that stores a lot of our personal data shortly. And the first thing I'm doing, I want to look at the electronic security, but first I'm going to find out where they're going to let me in. I put my yellow jacket on and I got into buildings through a back door, and people just say, "Hi, John, what are you doing?" And it's amazing what you can do from a physical access perspective, and I think you're right, it's awareness. On the digital side, whether we like it or not, criminals, terrorists, want to infiltrate buildings like this, facilities like this, concert grounds. Increasingly, they will use electronic methods to do their surveillance. I'll be doing a little talk on this later. So there's two things I think about any business. You've got the security, which is about stopping criminals getting in, getting hackers getting into your business. Because once they're in, they don't care about us. They don't care about our business. All they want usually is financial gain. So what can they get access to once they're in? What we've also got to think about, though, even if that security is good, we find many businesses allow sensitive commercial information or personal information of their staff, their clients, leak out of their business. That's a data breach. People don't realize that this is going on. It's amazing. We had an epiphany of a trustee of a very large care organization 6 months ago. Suddenly he was not listening to me in a presentation, and he said, Chris, I've got it. For all this last 2 years, I've been thinking that security is paramount, but you've just now made the penny drop. We're letting data leave the organization who can get into the wrong hands, and it can be used against us, our staff, and our business. So to your direct question, what can you do? Small businesses, the first thing is get Cyber Essentials. It's a government-capped scheme. Small businesses, less than 10 staff, £400, and probably half a day of your time. That will make you a lot safer than many other businesses. And your partner companies, clients you work with, will like you to have that badge. It's not the be-all and end-all. It's not 100% guarantee you won't be cyber attacked. There's another level called Cyber Essential Plus, which is a bit more onerous and more difficult to attain. So that's stopping people coming in. But actually, the going out is harder. What I would suggest is you have an audit. And it depends on the size of the business, how many systems, how many departments you've got. But an audit can be from a day's worth of work to 15 days worth of work. And it means someone who comes in, who understands data, digital systems, will come in, sit department by department, and will work with, and maybe deploy tools to understand what digital environment you're working. And our experience now is, if you said to me, my business has got 10 software systems that we're using, we've now proven over the last 6 years, we're underestimating by a factor of 10 or 11. Because how many people have got apps on their phones and their tablets, and they've signed up to them in the name of the email address of the business that they work for? They are all a potential data breach. So I think the first thing is Cyber Essentials are the security standard coming in. Going out, you've got to understand what data you've got and what systems it lives in, then rate them by risk. And no one's got enough money and time to fix all of them. You start off with the top 3 or 4 most high-risk systems. Often HR platforms, marketing platforms. In the case of Martin's Law, CCTV systems are critical systems. So I'd be then looking at what money and time and effort and resource do we need to spend on plugging those gaps. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. We are at the time that we'd got, but before we take a quick break, does anybody have any further questions? So the question we've got is going back to the idea of responsible persons. And Chris was saying he runs a site, but he says he doesn't have the authority to decide to put barriers up. Does that go higher up to senior management? And I think one of the things to be aware of here is that there is going to be further guidance, and we do have to bear in mind the need for that person to be senior enough within the organisation to be able to perhaps make those decisions. I think this is where understanding what authority you need, there's still going to be a piece on that. Now, there is currently being developed a new qualification. It will be a level 3 qualification for competent persons in the workplace. That's currently being developed. I would imagine that would provide some additional guidance on that. But it won't surprise you to know that I'm going to keep going back to risk assess. And obviously part of that risk assessment is communicating. If you've done the risk assessment, Chris, and identified the need for barriers, I would say at this point in time, take that to the senior management team and get their backing to do it. You've got some more. What are the registration requirements going to be? Registration requirements we don't yet know. We're still waiting on guidance for what that registration looks like. But one thing that I will just say is every month we run free webinars, always the third Thursday of the month from 1 till 2. Next week we've got one on events. When we get additional guidance coming out from the SIA, we'll feature additional webinars covering those topics. So I'm sorry I can't answer that question more effectively at the moment. Great question. So this one was, where are we on the timeline? I would say slightly behind where we were expecting to be. Earlier in the year, we expected by now that the SIA would have provided guidance. There is, within the industry, a lot of frustration it hasn't happened yet. Fegan Murray, who I mentioned earlier, she posts regular updates to people who are following her posts, and she's having a regular dialogue with the Home Office. Her most recent updates include the suggestion that we should expect to get some guidance in the new year. Again, we'll come on to those with some of our future webinars. So Chris has suggested that it might be useful for people to understand what different first aid is available for different tiers. Now, Phil does have a talk coming up later, but do you want to quickly...
So, an important thing we need to consider, everyone seems to gloss over first aid in terms of Martyn's Law at the moment. They say, oh, it didn't make the final cut. Martyn's Law quite clearly says that you must take reasonable and proportionate measures. By appointing the SAA, we can already see directions in which the SAA are mandating. After Manchester Arena events, the SAA were very quick in the midst of the inquiry to instill that all security officers must be trained in the emergency first aid at work qualification. Now, the SAA have been very active in improving the terminology and the ability of its security force since then, going above and beyond even what the inquiry found it was culpable for. We find ourselves in a little bit of a conundrum at the moment because a lot of people are glossing over a lot of stuff. I work obviously a lot on critical bleeds, and for the last 3.5 years, people have been very much like, yeah, it's great stuff, but we don't need to have it. One thing on that point to realise is the SAA, as of the 1st of April this year, have mandated that all security officers in their first aid training must be trained on critical bleeds, including the use of haemostatic agents and tourniquets. I'm not going to give too much away because part of my talk in a minute, but with the SAA also being regulated for Martyn's Law, and not stepping on toes, but an update on that, they have now actually appointed a director of the Martyn's Law regulations in the SAA, and they've just advertised 4 deputy director positions for that role. So there is some news coming out, and that only came out yesterday that those job vacancies have gone live, and they've announced that. So there is movement. The SAA is trying to do its part in moving forward. But with the SAA now doing this, and with the advent of critical bleeds, and with this, what we are seeing is they're taking the training principles very, very seriously. Their enforcement teams are out in terms of training malpractice. And they also just announced last week that they are going to conduct an 18-month review on the entire training process for the security industry. Now, from that, we can expect a huge leaping forward in terms of standards, from the use of blended learning, cutting down on learning times, to what's going to be included in the courses. First aid is one thing they're looking at because they realise that the emergency first aid at work qualification is not fit for what we'd actually deal with. The part of the problem of that comes into the fact that as employers and as people, we have to take time out of our work to go on these courses. So qualifications like FREC, like we were speaking about, they're great qualifications, but the problem is, although workplace would love to have them in there, they're a 5-day course, and they don't want to lose their employees for 5 days. So we are seeing people moving into blended, what we call Category D responder courses. We are starting to see a lot more people opting for the first aid at work qualification over the emergency, because now we're covering off things like slips, trips, falls with soft tissue damage, head injuries, poisons, the type of stuff that these are venues that we're looking at, it's their bread and butter accidents. It's what FSA is going to be dealing with. So I would say watch this space. It's going to be a very interesting 18 months, and I think there's going to be a big shake-up in terms of the qualification framework and everything else. So I hope that kind of like answers that off a bit.
Thank you, Phil. I'm just aware that we have slightly overrun on the Q&A session, but thank you for some fabulous questions. If you do have any more questions, both Chris and Phil are delivering our next talks, so you'll be able to pick up with them directly after theirs, or you'll be able to find us in the Protect Zone exhibition area if you want to follow up with any of your speakers directly. So thank you very much for your attention. It's been much appreciated. You're welcome to go and grab yourselves a quick refreshment, and we'll change the setup ready for our next speaker, and Chris will be joining us in 7 minutes. So hope to see you back here then.